I wish everybody in Australia a good evening to everybody who's watching us here live online, watching our YouTube or on our Facebook page. My name is Tennille Murray. I'm the Political Affairs Director at the HAA. And if you've been following us this week, you would have seen a lot of pictures of me at the most incredible conference. I'm coming to you live from Israel. I've been attending the Generations of Truth, the second annual conference on anti-Semitism, hosted by the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs, Amichai Chikli. It has been such an honor to represent Australia alongside Scott Morrison and Rabbi Ullman here in Israel, fighting anti-Semitism. I was in the Knesset on Monday, where we spent a full day with European leaders and parliamentarians all across Europe and around the world, discussing this global anti-Semitism problem that we are currently facing and the rise of radical Islam that is affecting our nations across the world. It has been inspiring, and I hope you've all been following our Facebook page, our social media to see some of the incredible people I've met. I had the opportunity to see the Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu, live on Monday evening at a gala dinner event. And to see somebody of that caliber talk about Australia, a lot of his speech was focused on the anti-Semitism we are currently seeing here in Australia, the Hanukkah attacks. It is something unbelievable to be a part of and to recognize that the state of Israel supports Australia. They are with Australia, and we are all in this together fighting anti-Semitism. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce our guest this evening. For our Zoom this evening, we are honored to welcome Brigadier General Amir Avivi, the founder and chairman of the Israel Defense and Security Force. For this timely and in-depth discussion on Israel's evolving security environment, Amir is drawing on decades of military leadership and strategic planning, and tonight we're going to examine the key defense challenges facing Israel today. And I know some of you are thinking, Iran? Definitely we'll be talking about Iran today, and the regional threats that are shifting this geopolitical dynamic. We're going to be talking about the military, about the political considerations, and what is shaping Israel's outlook for 2026. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and please welcome Amir.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure the opportunity to speak to you. We began 2026, and I think 2026 is going to be a very, very defining year. 2 years of war. We started from the most devastating moment in the history of the state of Israel, the 7th of October, with this terrible massacre and hostages, and a big, big trauma, and the multi-front war on all fronts, with a very, very big strategic danger. And after 2 years, yesterday, one of the happiest days Israel had, the last hostage came back, Brig, after an amazing operation of the IDF and the Shin Bet, that managed to get the relevant intelligence and found him in a grave near the house of Azadin al-Haddad, one of the biggest terrorists in Gaza and the Hamas commander of Gaza City, and now leading the remaining forces of Hamas. So at least one goal of war has been reached fully. And I want to remind that at the beginning of the war, we set very clear goals of war: to destroy Hamas as a governmental and military entity, bring back all the hostages, and to create a reality that never again there will be a terror army in Gaza, meaning demilitarizing completely the Gaza Strip and creating a different kind of governance inside Gaza, which is not Hamas, not Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and also not the Palestinian Authority. So at the moment, we reached one major goal of war, and we're looking ahead to the next challenges. Israel is resolute. It's very important to understand that Israel intends to achieve completely the goals of war in Gaza. Hamas is going to be given a clear timetable to disarm, to lay down their weapons. And if they don't do so, I can say that I met 2 weeks ago the commanders of the Southern Command. The plans are set. The IDF is ready to renew maneuver and go into the remaining of what is Hamas-controlled areas. Hamas is controlling approximately half of Gaza, 47% on the coastal area. The IDF is controlling 53% of the Gaza Strip, holding the high ground in Gaza. No hostages in Gaza now, so for the IDF, it's much easier to maneuver and operate. And Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump have stated again and again, it can happen the nice way or the hard way. It's either Hamas lay down their weapons and get out of Gaza, or they will be destroyed by the IDF, and the IDF is ready. They're waiting for the cabinet to instruct them to renew the maneuver and destroy Hamas, and only following the dismantling of Hamas as a governmental and military entity, only then we'll see a new reality and maybe reconstruction and rebuilding of Gaza, but with different government and not existing Hamas force. At the same time that Israel is dealing with Gaza and what will happen there, the most pressing issue at the moment is Iran. In the last few months, there was a sense that maybe the war is over, there is a ceasefire. It looked like everything ended. But the reality is that the first part of 2026 will be defined by the renewal of the war. We're going to see in the coming days, weeks, and months a renewal of the war on all fronts in Gaza, Lebanon, Iran, Houthis. We haven't finished yet our missions, and now we're looking at a new opportunity, not only to avoid a nuclear Iran, avoid a reality where they have ballistic missiles that endanger us, but a real reality to bring down the Iranian regime. And this is what we're aiming at. I think there is a clear understanding both on the US side and the Israeli side that we have the opportunity to bring down the Iranian regime. The US is building up its force. For the US, from decision to action, it takes time. So we're seeing the build-up of force of the US, we're seeing the training of the Central Command, but we're facing now 3 possible scenarios we need to take in account in the coming days and weeks. One scenario, which is not a good scenario, is a preemptive Iranian attack on Israel and the US. Iranians are training, their ballistic missiles are pointed to Israel. We heard in the last 2 weeks again and again, the Prime Minister, the Minister of Defense, the Chief of Staff, the Commander of the Air Force saying to Iran, if you dare shoot at us, the result will be devastating for Iran. But the fact that Israel is saying it again and again shows what we know. And this is the reality that the Iranian regime, they want revenge. They want to attack Israel. They want a revenge because of the humiliation of the 12-day war. They feel that the 12-day war has destroyed their deterrence globally and also internally. They want to build again their deterrence, and they feel that a preemptive attack, this is the way to do it. They analyzed the 12-day war and understood that what made it possible for Israel to win so decisively was that Israel surprised them and attacked. Therefore, this is what they want to do now. And this is not a reality Israel can have. We cannot agree to a reality where they shoot at us hundreds of ballistic missiles that might be quite dangerous and even devastating. So we have to avoid this scenario. And therefore, the second scenario is that we'll see an Israeli preemptive attack. Even before the US starts its attack, it's something that might happen. And we have to take it in account that Israel will get to the conclusion we cannot wait. We need to be proactive. We need to do something. And Israel will attack Iran even before a U.S. attack. And the third scenario is, I would say, the preferred scenario. And this is a U.S.-led attack on the Iranian regime with the goal to bring down this regime, calling the Iranian people to rise again, to fight, to storm all the centers of government of this evil regime, and really seize the moment and the opportunity to bring down the Iranian regime. Now, unlike the 12-day war, where we attacked Iran and the other proxies didn't get involved, the Iranians are putting a lot of pressure on Hezbollah, on the Houthis, on the militias of Iraq to intervene and to fight alongside Iran. So we might see a reality where this all multi-front war is renewed, and we'll see shooting also from Hezbollah, Houthis, Iraq. Israel has been degrading Hezbollah systematically again and again and again. And I think that Hezbollah is in a dilemma because they know that if they shoot Israel, the response of Israel will be such that will probably bring the dismantling Hezbollah. But still, they are weaponized by Iran, trained by Iran, funded by Iran. So not helping Iran is something very problematic for them. So this is why we're looking at a very, very dangerous and defining moment, but also a huge opportunity because it has to be clear, if we manage with the US and the Iranian people to bring down the Iranian regime, this will change the whole globe, the region. This will bring a collapse to all the proxies. This will stop also funding for Hamas and for terrorism in Judah and Samaria, and also global terrorism that is led by Iran. This is a huge deal, and this is why it's so important that we actually manage to do it and bring down this regime. And I don't think Israel and the US will miss the opportunity. We understand what is at stake. We understand how important it is, and looking at the huge massacre this regime has done to its people. Tens of thousands of people were killed and hanged and arrested. I don't think we can stand quietly and not do what is needed to do to really change the reality of the Iranian people. I think we can be optimistic and say that we might see Israel signing a peace agreement with Iran even before we sign a peace agreement with Saudi Arabia. This actually might happen. So the first half of the year is going to be defined by going back to war on all fronts and bringing down the whole Shia axis of Iran, which includes Gaza, Lebanon, militias in Yemen, Iraq, Iran itself. All the Shia axis needs to be dealt with. But we're coming to this in a completely different reality where Israel is very strong, is together with the US, fighting alongside each other, and our enemies are much, much weaker. And therefore, we're very confident that we can get the job done and win the war. As we are talking about bringing down the Shia axis, we see also the danger of the radical Sunni axis. Turkey, Qatar, Julani, Ashara forces in Syria, ISIS that is rising again, also in Iraq and Afghanistan. So we see a phenomena where when the Sunni radical forces are strong, the Shia radical forces are a bit weaker. When ISIS fell, Iran became stronger, but this is two radical forces, and we need to make sure that both of them are weak. So we saw already this week, Prime Minister Netanyahu talking about Iran and all its proxies, but also mentioning that once we bring down the Shia axis, we have to deal with the radical Sunni axis, which is not existent only in the Middle East, but it's also operating globally in Europe, in Australia, in the US, in South America, in other places. The Muslim Brotherhood is everywhere. And by the way, this is why it's so crucial to destroy Hamas. Hamas became the heroes of the Muslim Brotherhood. They challenged Israel, they did a massacre, and the only way to really weaken this axis is completely destroy Hamas in Gaza. This is not just about Israel's security, this is about regional security, and this is about global security. So we need to get rid of this Sunni radical axis also. And the way to do it is not only maintaining proactivity and the IDF attacking wherever is needed, it's also about building an alliance. So if the first 6 months of the year are going to be defined by going back to the war, I would say that the next 6 months of 2026 will be defined by peace agreements, by extending the Abraham Accords, by creating an alliance, a Western, Israeli, moderate Sunni alliance that will extend all the way to Indonesia and possibly Australia. Really a big alliance that will secure new routes of trade connecting India to the UAE and from UAE through Saudi Arabia to Israel. Israel is going to become a corridor of energy, center of trade, and really the cornerstone of a global alliance that will challenge the Sunni radical elements and the Shia radical elements, and also China and its attempts for hegemony. So this is really a great future that we're going to see. And I've said it from the 7th of October, 2 years ago, that the bigger the win will be, the more decisive Israel is going to win decisively, the greater the golden age of Israel will be the day after. And 6, 7 months, the day after this war, we'll see peace agreements. We'll see the economy booming. We're going to see massive, massive aliyah to Israel. We're going to see baby boom. Spent a lot of time in the shelters. So really, I think that Israel is steadily moving towards a golden age. But to reach this point, we really need to focus. We need to stay united. We need to stay resolute. We need to understand that we haven't finished the job yet. We have still a war to fight. But even me, with all my optimism and resolution, I couldn't have imagined that we'll reach this point where we can talk about a regime change in Iran. This is a new development. If we had this discussion a month ago, I'm not sure I would have talked about that. But when we see the rise of the Iranian people, when we see the US operating in Venezuela and arresting Maduro and willing to be involved in a regime change, when we see President Trump calling the Iranian people to storm the centers of government of the regime and says help is on the way, we understand that this is a completely different reality. They have never been weaker more than now, and we are stronger, and together the US and Israel can definitely get the job done and bring this change of regime and shape entirely a new Middle East. And as all these exciting things are happening, we'll have to start looking at the next two big challenges that Israel and the Jewish people will face. One big challenge is what we in IDSF call the fight over the land of Israel. We have talked about that 2 years before the war, when we foresaw the war. And we talked not only about the challenges along the border all the way to Iran, but the challenges inside Israel. The lack of governance in the Negev, in the Galil, the challenges in Judea and Samaria, the phenomena of crime, protection, the huge amass of weapons and munitions in the hands of Israeli Arabs, of like kind of militias that exist in different places. inside Israel and also in Judea and Samaria. This is a very big challenge. It hasn't been addressed properly by the Israeli governments. And what we are saying is when this war will end in a few months, we'll have to shift the center of gravity from the borders to dealing with internal security, to dealing with the challenges we have of illegal grabbing of land, of crime, protection, of illegal weapons, on a huge amount. We're talking about like 500,000 illegal weapons that we need to collect. Cannot have militias inside Israel. This might create a much more dangerous 7th of October. It's much harder to deal with phenomena inside that along the borders. So we have to be careful not to do what we did in the Yom Kippur War. In the Yom Kippur War, the war ended with a big trauma and we tripled the IDF. This is not what we need to do. Yes, we need to strengthen the army. Of course we do. We need to strengthen our military industries, but we need, the moment the war ends, to shift a lot of capabilities and forces and budget to internal security and deal with the challenges inside the land of Israel. And as we are doing that, Israel must change end-to-end its policies regarding anti-Semitism globally and delegitimation, and understand that this is a war. And we need to fight it just as we are fighting the Iranian Axis, Hamas, or internal challenges. Israel is not dealing with anti-Semitism the way it should. Okay? It should invest much more in securing the Jews around the world. We saw the devastating attack in Australia. And I must say that as much as I'm optimistic about what will happen in Israel and where this is going, I'm very pessimistic when it comes to anti-Semitism. I think it's going to grow exponentially. We saw that 2 years before the 7th of October. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to stop. And Israel, as a country, needs to be much, much more proactive in helping defend the Jews around the world. But at the same time, be much more proactive in preparing for massive aliyah to Israel. We in IDSF foresee in the coming years more than 1 million Jews that are going to come to Israel. Israel is not ready for that. We're not facilitating aliyah. We're not building enough. There are many, many challenges for Jews who want to buy in Israel or invest. Certainly, when it comes to aliyah, it's very bureaucratic, and we need to facilitate this. We cannot have a reality where it's difficult to make aliyah or to purchase in Israel. And this requires a very big shift in policy in Israel that needs to be done in the coming years. And as we're dealing with all these challenges, with the war, with Iran, with internal security, with anti-Semitism, the one way to really be able to approach this and deal with this is uniting the Jewish world around a clear vision. This clear vision has to be our Jewish Zionist vision. Going back to the basics of our identity and who we are, the only way to really bring unity and cohesion among the Jewish people. We have to remember, we're the heroes of the story, not the villains in our own story. And we better remember who we are and be proud of our heritage and history and identity. It's something we need to work on, and it's definitely something that the Jewish world, but Israel also needs to be very, very proactive globally, but also internally. The education system and the way we educate our young generation. So it's going to be a very challenging, but also exciting year that will really mark a moment in history where Israel will move from really one of the most difficult moments in its history to an era of prosperity and security. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Amir. I can see we have a lot of questions. Sorry, my camera. There we go. I can see we have a lot of hands up and a lot of questions. Before we go to the questions, I'd just like to say a thank you to Greg Ross Handler, who's one of our AJA supporters and friends, for helping in organizing Amir to be with us tonight. We'll start the questions with Alan Friedman, please.
Thanks, Tanil, and thank you, General Avivi. It sounds as if the next war with Iran will occur. It's not a matter of if, but a matter of when. I'm just wondering, how much is President Trump, quote, in charge, and will Israel be allowed the space to finally finish the job as it wants to?
So I think the way the US views it, President Trump wants to take a lead in this attack and bring down the Iranian regime. And this is the best scenario. We would like to see a US-led attack, unless we have the intelligence that we must act much faster and attack before the US. That scenario we would like to see, and this is what is coordinated with the US, is a US-led attack, decisive attack that will bring down the Iranian regime. I must say that when we talked about attacking Iran before the 12-day war, the US thought that this is going to be very hard. They said, look, you Israelis, you do whatever you need to do, but we're not sure you're really able to do it. And I've been saying before the war, during the war, being a aide-de-camp of the Chief of General Staff, seeing things very close. And also, I was chief auditor of the whole Israeli defense establishment. I know our capabilities, and I said again and again, what Israel can do is beyond imagination. And we've shown that on the 12-day war. And I must say, we didn't use all our capabilities. There are many capabilities we didn't use in the 12-day war. And I think that if we'll have to use more capabilities, we'll do so. Israel has full freedom of operation to defend itself. Rather than the US defend ourselves, this is very clear. On the contrary, I would say that the expectation of the US, not only from Israel, also from Europe, is to be able to defend ourselves by ourselves. The US doesn't want dependency. They want to see countries investing in their national security. This is why they're talking about what percentage of the GDP will be invested in different countries in building armies. The US doesn't intend to defend the other countries. They want the other countries to defend themselves. So US is not restricting Israel. They say to Israel, you do what you need to do. But I think that in this case now, when you talk about President Trump, this has become personal. The Iranians have tried to kill him twice. He said that if they, massacre or they attack their own people, he will react. And when you talk about tens of thousands of people who were dead, he cannot go back. There's only a path forward to attack them and destroy this regime.
Thank you, General. We'll cut to our CEO, Robert Gregory, please.
Thank you, General. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. And yeah, from an Australian perspective, can agree with everything you're saying. We're seeing a lot of people expressing interest in Aliyah. So I think at least from Australia, you're going to see a big growth in that. Just wanted to ask about Saudi Arabia. A lot of people are saying that they've switched sides now. They're moving more to Qatar, Muslim Brotherhood, but some people are saying there's still hope. What do you think? Which way they're going?
Yeah, we see some, complicated and strange things with Saudi Arabia. For example, the tension between Saudi Arabia and UAE in Yemen. In Yemen, you have three main forces. You have southern Yemen that is backed up by the UAE, and they are controlling most of Yemen today. Then you have the central government of Yemen, which is controlling a really small area and is backed up by Saudi Arabia. And then you have the Houthis. And the Saudis are getting very, very nervous because South Yemen are expanding all the time. So now they have a kind of a clash with the UAE, and also they're getting closer to the Turks, and they have their relations also with the Iranians. I don't know if this is tactics in order to get more from the US, or they're actually shifting. I would think that it will be very strange in a reality where Israel and the US are dominating what's happening in the Middle East, to see Saudi Arabia moving to another place. So I'm optimistic. I think that they really need an alliance with the US. We have to understand, from 45 all the way to Obama's presidency, there was a clear relationship between Saudi Arabia and the US. US needed Saudi oil, and Saudis needed US defending them. But during Obama's era, the US became completely independent talking about oil. They don't need Saudi oil anymore. The Saudis are selling their oil today to China, not to the US. The biggest trade partner of Saudi Arabia is China. So having the US defending Saudi Arabia cannot be taken for granted. And we saw that during Obama's time and also Biden's time, the relationship between the US and Saudi Arabia was really bad. So the only way for the Saudis to make sure that no matter what president will be in the White House, there will be an alliance between the US and Saudi Arabia is allying with Israel. It's creating a regional global alliance. They need it much more than us. We don't need them. They need us. They need this alliance. So I think that if I think logically, I would assume that at the end of the day, they will join the Abraham Accords and will normalize relations, and not for the sake of Israel, for their own sake, because this is the only way they can ensure the US will side with them. And by the way, when they look at the prospect of change of regime in Iran, this is even more crucial, because if the US shifts its alliance to Iran and disregards Saudi Arabia, this can be really bad for them. So if they want to be relevant, they need to join the alliance.
Absolutely. Thank you. Kathy, would you like to unmute?
Thank you. Thank you. As terrible things have been happening in Iran to the civilians, similarly, the Kurds in northwest Syria have been under serious attack the last few days. What can Israel, like I think 20 days ago that they attacked Aleppo, the Kurdish suburbs there, no international media particularly focused on it. And it seems that the American administration are really supporting Jilani to have a centralised control, sending all his Idlibi mayors over all the minorities. Is there anything Israel can do to push a more, the idea of a federated, decentralised sort of governance that the minority groups can have their own police forces, their own mayors, and be equally represented in that sort of a governance model, rather than just have another dictator?
Yeah, so I think definitely looking at Syria, the way the US views Syria and Israel views Syria is very different. You're right, Kathy. The US wants a centralized government. We know what it means. It means massacring, the Kurds and the Alawis, and if they can, also the Druze, which we are defending at the moment. And we don't think this is a good path. We know Jilani forces are radical. They are, emerging from ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Jabhat Nusra, all these groups. I think maybe now the US is starting to realize what they're dealing with when they see what's happening with the Kurds. I think that you cannot unify Syria anymore. I think Syria will go back to civil war. And what Israel needs to do, we need to secure our borders. We need to stay on top of the Mount of Hermon. We need to be inside the areas where the Druze are and secure our borders from inside Syria. Syria doesn't exist. It's only on the map. Jilani is controlling, maybe half, maybe less. And I don't think we'll see any stabilization. Syria, by the way, like Iran, is suffering for lack of water and food and so on. And now the US is talking maybe about reinstating sanctions on the regime because of what they are doing. So in this chaos, and while Turkey is also, operating alongside Giuliani and helping attack the Kurds, one thing we can do is have very clear red lines, not letting the Turks expand, not letting Giuliani expand to the south, at the same time securing the Druze, which are our allies, and strengthen our positions inside Syria and on the top of the Hermon. And I believe that the US, at the end of the day, will come to the senses and understand that this regime is no good. It's dangerous.
Thank you, Amir. Speaking of Turkey, I want to ask you about the threat of Turkey in Cyprus. I know we have a partition in Cyprus where Turkey has the control of the larger half. How big of a threat do you perceive Turkey conquering the southern and the eastern point of Cyprus as a bridge towards Israel?
Well, Israel has an alliance with Cyprus and Greece and Italy. When we are talking about connecting east to west through Israel, on one side, as we mentioned, we have India, UAE, Saudi Arabia, now Somaliland. And on the other side, we have Cyprus and Greece. And this is the corridor we want to create from the east to Europe through Israel. The Turks are part of NATO. They cannot do whatever they want. And we have to monitor closely what they do. They talk a lot. But I'm not sure there are direct threat to Israel at present. We have to monitor this very closely. Erdogan, he wants to go back to the Turkish Empire, the Ottoman Empire. He wants to control Jerusalem, Israel, everything. He can continue dreaming. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to let him expand to Israel. But I think that looking at it as a general and looking at the buildup of the IDF in the future, if I look 20 years back, when we were talking about what are we building the IDF for, we were talking, of course, about Iran, talking about the Air Force and intelligence and Mossad. But when we talked about the borders, we were talking about terror armies, Hamas, Hezbollah, militias in Syria, and so on. But the question is, what are we going to build the IDF for in the next 20 years? And I think the answer is crystal clear. We need to build the IDF potentially to deal with countries like Egypt or Turkey, to deal not with terror armies, to deal with a regular army, a big one. And dealing with a regular army, it's not just about ground forces, it's also about the Navy. Both the Turks and the Egyptians have a huge Navy. And when we think about our Navy, we need to really look at the future and how we build the Navy. And of course, also the Air Force and air defense, but it also requires very, very strong ground forces. So obviously, if for years there were generals talking about a small and sophisticated army, we need a big, very big, sophisticated army, not a small one. And in this sense, we need everybody to serve. I think that's one thing that we in IDSF have been saying for years. In Israel, everybody needs to serve. We need a big army. We need a National Guard. We live in a jungle. It's a challenging place. I always remind that when I was a deputy division commander in the Gaza Strip, I always had delegations coming and I would brief them about what's going on in Gaza. It was always the same. I was a colonel at the time. They would ask me, Colonel, what's going on in Gaza? And I would say to them, basically from the day of the judges in the Bible, same thing, the Gazans attack us. We bring the people, we fight back again and again and again. You read the book of Judges and you look at today and you ask yourself, okay, what changed in the last 3,000 years? Nothing. But at the end of the book of Judges, after all the wars in Gaza and Samson and all these stories, it says, and the land was quiet for 40 years. And Our rabbis asked, why does the Bible need to state that? Every sentence in the Bible has a meaning. And the answer is that 40 years of quiet in the land of Israel is an event of biblical dimension. It never happened in 4,000 years. So even if we reach peace for a certain period of time, and it's only peace through strength. Only if we are strong, we'll have peace. We don't know what future holds, and we need to have a very, very resilient society, strong, and a strong army. The stronger we are, the more time we'll have peace.
And we all hope for peace in the future. Morris, please unmute.
General Amir Avivi, you're always a wealth of knowledge and information. I've heard you many times with David Schulberg on the Israel connection. When the war starts with Iran, do you see the other Western democracies in Europe rendering any assistance?
Yeah, I think we might see Britain involved, especially on the defense side. I mean, we've seen it also in the previous war with Iran and the previous attacks of Iran on Israel, when they sent drones towards Israel and ballistic missiles and so on. Countries like Britain, France were involved also in defending in a coalition, and also the Arab countries, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and so on were part of this coalition. When the US comes to fight in the Middle East, we're talking about the Central Command. All the members of the Central Command have to be part of these preparations. And so, yes, I think there will be a kind of a coalition, but it mostly will be the US and Israel dealing with these challenges. I must say that since the 12-day war, Israel enhanced dramatically our defense capabilities. We improved the Arrow 3. We're working very hard already on Arrow 4 and Arrow 5. The laser now is operational and can be really helpful, talking about dealing with drones, which we managed to deal very well in the 12-day war. So definitely a lot of things improved. The Israeli industries are working around the clock to produce munitions, to improve the technologies. And when we really unite and put our minds, into a mission, it's amazing what can be achieved.
Thank you, General. Brian, would you like to unmute?
Yes, very briefly, just following on from Alan, Trump's methodology sometimes has been he rattles a cage and then he does a deal. He did that with Panama, he did that with Greenland. What do you think is the end game here?
You're talking about Iran? The end game is crystal clear. Bring down the regime. It's a regime change in Iran. This is the end game. I think that all the talks around it are like smoke, this is the way we saw Trump also before the 12-day war. A lot of talking, and maybe we'll talk and maybe not, and maybe we'll negotiate and maybe not. But I think that this time it's very, very serious, and the end game is bringing down the regime.
Thank you. Dennis, would you like to unmute?
Hi, thank you, General Avivi. I've had a news feed today from World Israel News saying that the Saudi Crown Prince bin Salman has been talking to President Pezeshkian in Iran, and that under no circumstances will Saudi Arabia allow any aggression against Iran, and that he has presented this to the US as well. I'm revisiting what Robert Gregory asked you about before, but how influential could bin Salman be in preventing the US from participating?
I don't think they are going to manage to prevent the US from attacking Iran. I think that the Sunni regimes, while they hate Iran, they see them as an existential threat. They are really petrified by the idea that the US, especially the US, but also Israel, will do a change of regime. Because when they see this in South America, in Venezuela, and now they will see it with Iran, what they are thinking is, we're next. How long it will take until they will change us also? So they say, look, why are you doing that? Weaken them. Okay, we understand. Weaken the regime. Why are you pushing towards a change of regime? This scares them to death, really. They're scared because they're thinking about themselves, not because they're thinking about Iran. And also they're thinking, okay, and if they will actually do a change of regime and Iran will side with the West, what it will mean for their positioning globally and regionally. So they're very scared of such a big change. And this is why they are so aggressive and demanding not to do the change. But at the end of the day, looking at it from an Israeli-American perspective, for us, it's crystal clear. This regime needs to go.
Thank you, General. David, would you like to unmute, please?
Yeah, firstly, thanks, Morris, for your generous words. Make sure everybody listens to L'chaim straight after this broadcast. Amir, your vision that you've been elucidating for us today, is it dependent at all on who gets the ascendancy in the Israeli elections this year?
Wow, I'm not a political commentator, but I know the Israeli society well. I will say this. First, I think elections will be on time, meaning October, September, maybe beginning of November. In Israel, we have many occasions where we do elections before time. But the government is saying again and again, the Prime Minister is saying again and again, I don't want elections before time. We have a lot of challenges now. We have Iran, we have Hamas, and so on. So they're trying this coming week or two to pass the budget and pass the draft law. And this will make sure that this government will stay until October. I think that overall, looking at the Israeli society is moving ideologically more to the right. And many people have awakened on the 7th of October. Their thoughts about, two-state solution, or we have partners and so on, have changed a lot. But these people who are moving to the right, they are not necessarily connecting to the existing right-wing parties. And I think that one of the interesting things in these elections is the prospect of new leadership emerging. New leadership is not going to take over, completely the government, but it's going to emerge. We'll see new faces in the Israeli politics. One of the things that really bother me is not just these elections, it's the day after Netanyahu and Trump. I think that there is a good possibility that Netanyahu will manage to form again a coalition after this upcoming elections, especially if he reaches all these goals we talked about, to win decisively the war, to sign peace agreements and so on. But the question is, to me, not this election. I'm much more interested in what will happen the day he actually steps down and finishes his term as prime minister. And this will probably be about the time when President Trump won't be president. We must have very, very capable and good leadership by then to lead Israel. I'm really, I won't say scared, but I'm really worried about what is the US the day after President Trump. Where Russia is going, maybe the day after Putin. There are going to be a lot of changes globally, and Israel needs to build its leadership and be ready for the next challenges.
Thank you, General. And this is a perfect segue to introduce that next week, talking about political updates, we will be hosting Lahav Hakov, who is the senior political correspondent at Jewish Insider. So make sure to join us next week online and have all your political questions ready for Lahav. We'll go to Arn if you'd like to unmute, please.
Hello, Amir. So my question is, given the state of Iran at the moment, how would Israel and or America secure the region of Iran if the Islamic regime was to be overthrown so that it doesn't create a power vacuum when another dictator like Russia, China, or worse, another Islamic regime take over and then repeat its threats towards Israel and America?
Well, I think that at the moment, the Iranian people, since they don't have in Iran a real leader that is leading the opposition, they are relying more on Reza Pahlavi, the son of the Shah. We see the Iranians raising the flag of the Shah. I'm not sure they want on the long term to become again a kingdom, like it was at the days of the Shah itself. But I think that they understand that they need to unite around somebody. Reza Pahlavi is the right guy, and maybe he will form some kind of interim government until we'll have a process of democracy and elections in Iran. So Iranian people are much more inclined to the West. They do have kind of democratic way of thinking. And they are Persian, they are not Arab, they are a completely different culture. They really like Israel, by the way, many of them, and like the regime. And therefore, I'm optimistic about the ability of the Iranian people to build for themselves a good future. It can work better in Iran than what we saw in places like Iraq, Afghanistan, or Syria. I think a change of regime in Iran might actually work better.
Thank you, Amir. Reuven, would you like to unmute?
Amir, hi. My question is in regard to the Iron Beam. Is it ready to be deployed against the ballistic missiles from Iran?
Yeah, sorry.
About the Iron Beam, if it's ready to be deployed against ballistic missiles from Iran.
Okay, the Iron Beam. No, the answer is no. Developing laser technology is very challenging. To create the amount of focus energy needed to destroy a ballistic missile with laser is something that Israel is developing, but it takes time. Iron Beam at the moment is more capable to deal with rockets, mortar, drones, short-range challenges, not ballistic missiles. There is also a challenge in the process how you take this technology and not only utilize it on the ground, but incorporate it also on the airplanes. So this technology is developing all the time, but the goal is definitely to reach a point where we can destroy ballistic missiles, even hypersonic ballistic missiles, with this technology.
Thank you. We've got just enough time for our last two questions. Charlotte, please unmute.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if there's been a recognition within the armed forces and government level of the colossal failure of, I guess, Hasbara having a suitable spokesperson to defend Israel, in addition to the now 8-front war that Israel is waging, and we as diaspora Jews are facing around the world. We started off with the excellent Elon Levy, and then for whatever reason he disappeared, but there doesn't seem to have been a replacement. Obviously there's independent things like Elon's got his own show now, or Fleur Hassan Nahum on JNS, or someone like that, but there really should be someone representing Israel to the world.
I don't think, by the way, it's only one person. We really have to build a very robust capability to not to asbara, to asbir, it means to explain. It's not a good word at all. We need to shape our minds.
Amir, you are just breaking up quite a bit with the reception.
First and foremost, the Jewish people. Yeah, sorry. So I'm saying asbara is not a good word because asbara is wrong. With asbara, which is shaping hearts and minds, it's a battle of narratives, and we have to really make sure that our narrative and our story prevails. And it cannot be one person doing that. It needs to be a whole system that works and uses the cutting edge technologies we have today, AI and so on. But it all starts with a coherent story. You cannot break the story. And I think that one of the problems we have when we talk about fighting anti-Semitism is that many organizations that take upon ourselves to fight anti-Semitism, they don't have a coherent story. Anti-Semitism, but I am not going to talk about Judea and Samaria because this is something that, so what's the story? I mean, the story we had the and we have to learn the basic history. You cannot put a whole story. The story to the people is an holistic story. And what to be between the Bible and completely different things. And we have to tell our holistic story and stick to it. And then the problem solving, we have many challenges that we have to deal with. And the problem is that we have put holes in our story. The story doesn't make sense anymore. We cannot be occupied in the heart of our land and the Bible tells. And we have to tell the story as it is. Look at the Palestinians. The story is completely false, has no historical facts. But the story is simple. Palestine will be free from the river to the sea. That's it. Simple. No explanations needed. Very clear, very simple. Touches the heart. So what do you answer? What do you say? No, listen, maybe it's half-half. Maybe half is yours, half is ours, Tel Aviv is ours, but the heart of the story of the Bible is not ours. It doesn't make sense. If you don't speak to the basic truth that we are the people of Israel and this is the land of Israel, you cannot really shape hearts and minds. We need to go back to be the heroes of our own story. And it's not about the presenter. It's about the story. And we all need to stick to our story and really believe in it and be proud of it. And this is regardless of everyday problems that we're having and challenges that we're having that we need to deal with. And this is not happening. We're not sticking to our story and we're not really making sure that the story is holistic. Once we do that and we say, this is the story we want to tell, and this is the story that will shape hearts and minds globally, then we have a chance. I can say, I'm very fond of classical music. I like Handel. And Handel wrote a wonderful piece called Zadok the Priest. And this piece of music is used hundreds of years by the kings and queens of Europe in their coronation. And what does this piece say? Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet anointed Solomon king, and all the people rejoice. The kings of Europe are using our history to ground themselves. And then they say to us that we're occupiers. Doesn't make sense. So we need to go back and tell our story, reconnect, because all of the movement of new countries in Europe was based on the story of the people of Israel. This is why they are using our story for the coronation.
Thank you, Amir. And that's exactly what we say. It is education and truth that will prevail. Unfortunately, we are out of time for this evening, but I would like everybody to know that the Israel Defense and Security Forum, as many people has mentioned in the chat here, they post daily and weekly videos on YouTube. You can type in Israel Defense and Security Forum on YouTube. These are very educational and informational videos, and I recommend that everybody jump on the channel, subscribe, follow. You can also Google Israel's Defense and Security Forum to find out more about the organization, their website, and what they're getting up to, because it is a vital source of information in this day. General Amir Avivi, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on this evening. We thank you for your time, thank you for your update, and thank you for your deep insights into the region. It's a pleasure having you on, and I wish everybody a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much.